place I know. I love writing poems about the beautiful planet. It got me to the final of Britain's Got Talent.
This is the moment when the world met Aneeshwar.
And you got 4 yeses.
But the Earth has a problem. Our climate is changing, and it's making me sad. At COP27, we need a solution. But the grown-ups are struggling with difficult choices.
Blah, blah, blah.
In this show, there are 6 of us from 6 different nations. So it's up to us kids to raise up our voices. This is 6 ways to save our planet. Whoa. This place is mysterious. Planet Earth is under threat from the climate crisis. So I'm on a mission to find out what we can do to save our planet, as well as all the humans and animals that live here. Helping me out, I have 5 friends around the world. We're going to start in Kenya, in Africa.
I have planted over 1 million trees across Africa and just near my home in the city of Nairobi, Kenya. With permission, of course. Here, I organize events to get lots of people to buy seeds and plant trees. They help soak up climate-changing gases like carbon dioxide produced by cars and power stations. When the world leaders announced the next climate change summit, COP27, was to be held in Africa in Egypt, I was glad because they need to listen up. This is what it's like in East and Northern Kenya. Just a few hours' drive from my city. It used to be green and healthy land, producing food for those who lived there. But look at it now. The land is dry. The crops are failing. People are starving here. Kenya is experiencing its worst drought in 40 years. More than 7 million people in the north and east are without food or access to water. Millions more in neighboring countries. Africa is among the smallest producers of carbon dioxide. Yet it is becoming the biggest victim of climate change. Lots of charities are trying their best to save lives. Hey Tiffany, I just want to know, how bad is it out there where you are?
The epidemic of malnutrition in this part of Kenya has reached severe levels. Every day we see over 200 people for life-saving interventions for hunger response. Unless the food scarcity in these areas improves, lives will most certainly be lost.
I'm heading to West Kenya, where there is also a drought. But here, there is hope. Just a few years ago, parts of this region had become so dry, it had been declared a semi-desert. But now, look at it. When farmers here saw how climate change was destroying their fertile land, they took action before it was too late. I discovered that farmers in the West have avoided a famine. They are learning about a new way to grow crops and to evolve my favorite weapon to beat climate change: trees.
Okay, this one, maize.
Charities are teaching young farmers, like Naman, that trees not only save dry and damaged soil, but also protect their crops from drought. So I can see you have some purpose over there.
Yes, these ones, fruits you can eat. Either you like, you can sell.
But before Naman could grow his crops, he needed trees, lots of them. The issue is, they had all been chopped down. Traditionally, farmers destroy forests to create fields. So where did all these trees come from? It was discovered that if a stump of a tree had shoots like this, you could bring the tree and the soil back to life. But once the trees are established, the roots draw up water buried deep underground and hold rainwater around its roots. The tree roots also attract food for the crops, minerals and organic material known as nutrients. And the trees act like a canopy, protecting the crops from the wind and the burning sun. Naman learned about this method of farming at school when he was 12. He gave it a go. With no income, Naman needed to do something to save the family.
How did it feel when you got your first ever crop?
I feel excited because the demand of crops was very high.
3 years on, Naman and his family are producing enough crops to feed themselves and others, and he is passing on his knowledge to the next generation of young farmers. Charities have trained more than 100,000 young farmers how to bring their farms back to life.
In other parts of Africa, the land is lost. It is too late. But here, there is real hope. You know, Aneeshwar, I want Africa to help others. What I found here is answers, not problems.
Thank you, Ariane. So what can we do here in the UK to make sure our food, what we're eating, isn't harming the planet? Well, one idea is to grow food in your garden like this pear tree. And my mum and dad have made me a greenhouse. Let's go and look at it. Whoa, this thing is very lush. And I think I found a cucumber. There he is. He hasn't been plucked off yet. I know a lot of people don't have gardens like ours, but you can even grow stuff in a window box like strawberries, baby carrots, or even salads. One of the reasons our climate is changing is, unlike my pears, most of our food has been transported from all over the globe. Think of all those ships, all the lorries bringing our food into our supermarkets. They use fossil fuels like diesel. That is really bad for the environment. To show you what I mean, I'm going to do a little experiment. Down here, we have a load of things that my mum and dad have bought from the local supermarkets. And over here, we have a map of the world to show where everything comes from. So these green beans are from Kenya. Okay, let's leave it there. Let's get a pin and let's put it right in Kenya. So what do we have next? We got kiwis from New Zealand. That's really far away. Apples from Italy. Asparaguses, yes, from Peru. That's where Paddington lives. A cucumber from Spain. And tomatoes from Morocco. That is so weird because we already have tomatoes in my back garden. So how many miles have all this fruit and veg travelled to get to my house? Well, I've been doing some sums on my dad's calculator, and guess what? It adds up to 102,590 miles. That's about the same distance as travelling around the world 4 times. Wow! There's got to be a better way to get our food, right? Well, maybe we just need to build a greenhouse like mine, but make it humongously huge. A bit like this one. This is one of the biggest greenhouses in the UK, just outside Norwich. It's the same size as 26 football pitches. I've never seen anything like this before in my life. The man who runs this place is called Chris, and I really want to ask him some questions. How can a giant greenhouse like this help to save the planet?
Because by growing like this, we can save 60% of carbon emissions by not importing food from other places.
Is it just that the food doesn't need to travel that far? Or are there different ways why this place is eco-friendly?
Well, what we do, we harvest every drop of rainwater to feed the plants, and because of this, we hardly use any pesticides. And then there's one other big secret, but you have to go down the road to see that.
That sounds very mysterious. Huh? Why have I been brought to the local sewage works? When you flush your toilet at home or when you have a shower, the wastewater ends up at a place like this. It's a little bit stinky, but I don't know what this is about with tomatoes and cucumbers.
So those crops in that glass house, they require heat to grow. And the amazing thing is that when we have treated water on this site, we take the heat from that treated water and send that to the glass house.
Did you say the heat from our wheat is used to grow salad?
That's an amazing fact. So when you flush the toilet, that comes to this site as dirty water, and then it's got heat in there, and we use that heat for those crops to grow.
That is amazing! So the heating system in the greenhouse is using hot water, while the other ones have been wasted. It's basically a way of growing healthy food that isn't causing as much damage to our planet. If every country does this, it will make a huge difference. Most of us these days live in towns and cities, and very often that means there's loads of pollution from the traffic. But what if we could change all that? Well, the next idea to save the planet all comes from a friend of mine in Colombia. You're gonna love this.
Bienvenidos a la capital.
Welcome to the capital city of my home country, Colombia.
Esta es Bogotá.
This is Bogota. Aneeshwar, there is so much traffic here. The city is very overcrowded. So it's no wonder that Bogota is best known for being one of the most polluted cities on the earth. I know. What a title.
Este es el problema.
Here's the issue. Oil is a fossil fuel we get from deep underground. It's used to make petrol and diesel for transport. When that is burned in an engine, it releases gases through the exhaust pipe into the atmosphere. Those gases trap the Earth's heat, causing global warming, which leads to climate change we're all beginning to experience. But that pollution can make us really ill. It can damage our lungs when we breathe it in. The pollution is so bad here that there are monitoring instruments all over the city, collecting data to see how much pollution there is in the air. This website gives live updates. 114 is very worrying because it is a very high level of pollution where I am. But the biggest victim of this pollution is planet Earth. This is my cousin Francisco. We got so angry about pollution that we set up a campaign group and staged protests to demand the government to do more.
En 2021,
In 2021, some of us travelled to Glasgow for COP27, the last meeting of world leaders to discuss climate change, and we staged a protest with Greta Thunberg. Just giving ourselves a voice to be heard can help save our planet. And our government is listening now. In the last few years, the authorities have spent hundreds of millions of pounds making transportation in the city cleaner. And we got a say too. The authorities asked residents for their ideas at meetings and in surveys. We asked for cable cars to take us across the city. We can now travel 7 miles without the need to drive or get a bus across the city down below. We can also avoid dangerous areas where there is crime. We asked for cleaner buses. Bogota now has the second largest fleet of electric buses in the world, 1,485 of them. And we now have the longest network of cycle lanes in Latin America, and they will keep making it longer until it reaches 550 miles of cycle lanes. Well, I am very happy because yes, I think we have made progress. Yes, I think there is a better future, so hopefully the government will support the city to be a greener city, and that helps the environment, but it also helps us. Back to you, Aneeshwar.
Thank you, Sarah. I wish we had cable cars in my town. It would be so cool! But what can we do to make sure we're not polluting the planet when we're travelling around the UK? Well, here's one idea. If you don't already have a bike, why don't you learn how to ride one? There are lots of schemes for us to learn how to ride cycles safely. Did you know there is about 1 billion bicycles in the world? And every time you ride on one instead of going on your mum's or dad's car, that can help to stop climate change. Sadly, only 2% of us in the UK cycle to school, so that's something we definitely need to improve on. One of the biggest problems in our cities is that there isn't much space for the natural world, but it doesn't have to be that way. The next big idea to save the planet comes from Sadie in Singapore.
Welcome to one of the smallest countries in the world. This is my home, and even though I'm just an ordinary kid, I'm kind of protective about it. The way I see it, there's nowhere else like this on Earth. Its nickname is the city in a garden, and it's easy to see why. But all this greenery isn't just to look pretty. It's also doing a really important job. Singapore is one of the hottest places on the planet. So for many years now, the city authorities have been looking for innovative ways to cool things down. And they've discovered something quite incredible that the rest of the world can learn from as our planet heats up. It's not rocket science. Singapore's secret is actually quite simple. Okay, are you ready? Here we go. Yep, simply by planting trees, this city has lowered the air temperature by up to 2 degrees Celsius. The trees provide shade and release cooling water vapor into the air from their leaves. In Singapore, we try to live in harmony with the natural world. This is a major tourist attraction called Gardens by the Bay, where you can take a walk above a canopy of trees, even though some of them are man-made. You'll also find vegetation on lots of Singapore's buildings, including this eco-friendly hotel. And at the airport, where they've got their own rainforest waterfall.
I love it here. It's like a high-tech tropical paradise.
But even though Singapore has made a good start, with more than half of our land now covered with trees, we know we've got to do more to tackle climate change. So our government has drawn up what it calls the Green Plan.
So what will the Green Plan mean for us?
Well, the Green Plan is actually trying to turn Singapore into a city in nature. And that means putting in so many parks and green spaces such that nobody living in Singapore is more than 10 minutes walk away from a place like this. If you look at the bird's eye view of Singapore, you will see a city, very busy, full of people, but at the same time, it's all green. It looks like a jungle, and that's what we aim to do.
And what are the advantages of creating more green spaces?
The advantages are plentiful. Greenery and nature, plants, they capture carbon. It cools the planet. And the green spaces also provide living spaces for lots of interesting animals. So these are very important things.
But what about all the buildings in Singapore? There's a lot of concrete, right?
There is a lot of concrete, but what Singapore does very well and is trying to improve on is putting plants on buildings. So even though you're in the middle of the city, many of these buildings, houses and hotels have vertical greenery. It's not easy to do, but we have tried our very best and I think we have done very well in doing so.
That all sounds really sensible, but there is a problem. Singapore still uses a lot of air conditioning units. Can you see them up there? They're pretty ugly, to be honest. And they use up loads of energy. The way they work is by pumping hot air out of buildings that people work and live in. It's not very eco-friendly. So here's another idea that Singapore's trying out. The city's engineers say that down there is one of the largest systems of its kind in the whole world. An underground network of pipes sending chilled water through an entire district. The pipes travel through all buildings, helping to cool down the air inside. It will cut down the amount of energy we use by more than 40%, as well as reducing carbon emissions. You can probably tell I'm really quite proud of my country and everything we're doing to tackle climate change. And at night, the man-made super trees are lit up in a spectacular display, powered by solar energy. It's like a beacon of hope for the future of our planet, right? That's pretty cool.
Thank you so much. I wonder what we can do here in the UK to change our concrete jungles into nature reserves. Well, just like in Singapore, some of our towns and cities have started to build living walls with plants on them to soak up harmful gases like carbon dioxide. But that's not the only way to bring in the greenery. Another idea is to plant a tree, just like I did in my back garden. The Woodland Trust is giving away loads of trees for communities and schools. In total, it wants us to plant 50 million trees in the UK to help the climate. So why not ask your teacher if you can plant a tree at your school? Okay, it's time to have our next idea to save the planet. And this one's actually quite simple. Instead of using fossil fuels to create electricity, let's try and use something greener and cleaner. Let's go to Australia.
Welcome to my home, Sydney, Australia. Just like you, Aneeshwar, I love everything about our planet, especially the incredible marine life we share it with.
Whenever I go for a surf, dive, or even a swim, I make sure to look out for rubbish in case it hurts any marine life. We're pretty good here in Australia, but there are other things we need to work on.
My country is the world's second biggest producer of coal. We dig it up and export it overseas. It's mainly used by power stations that burn coal to heat water, creating steam that power turbines, which produces electricity. Coal is a fossil fuel, releasing the very gases into the atmosphere that lead to climate change. Despite pressure to stop producing coal, Australia refuses. But things are changing.
I'm about to take a flight to examine something so huge that we have to use a helicopter to see all of it. Here we go. We're taking off really close to where we need to go to use the minimum amount of fuel. What we're about to see is awesome. This is the country's largest solar farm, producing huge amounts of electricity generated by the sun's powerful rays.
So many of them. It's pretty magnificent, isn't it?
I'm flying over Darlington Point Solar Farm. Here they oversee nearly 1 million solar panels.
How big is it really? This solar farm right here spans for 6 kilometres in one direction and covers an area of almost 2,000 acres. How much electricity are they producing? This facility has the ability to produce 330 megawatts of power. It can power about 110,000 homes every single year.
110,000 homes is about the same as a city the size of Plymouth in the UK.
This produces no carbon dioxide at all. It's a state-of-the-art facility that is really leading the way in terms of innovation for what we can do all across the planet.
And solar energy is about to get bigger in Australia, a lot bigger. Construction is about to begin on the world's largest solar farm, with up to 28 million solar panels.
The energy it creates will be sold and exported to Singapore using a giant cable. This is the future, exporting green energy to countries that don't have the land for solar farms like Australia does.
Coming here, I actually realised how advanced our technology is. I feel really hopeful towards our future and how far this technology can go. Now I know that people are really putting in the work and trying to make this world a better place for generations and generations to come.
Thank you, Romney. We have quite a lot of solar farms in the UK too. This one isn't so far away from my house. And this one has been built on an old RAF base in Norfolk. But we don't have as much space as they have in Australia, so we're having to find clever solutions. One idea is to build solar panels that float on water, like these ones on a reservoir near London. Next, we're heading to the United States of America to hear about an idea what may totally change the world. It may sound a bit weird, but I'm going to let my friend Lila tell you more.
You might recognize this place from the Spider-Man movies. It's probably the most famous city in the world. Welcome to my home, New York. Unfortunately, New York's got a problem. A really big problem. As our planet's climate changes, the ice caps are melting and there are more and more storms. And because New York is surrounded by water, it means that flooding is becoming more and more common. Just take a look at this. This is not a disaster movie. It's real life. Hurricane Sandy in 2012 and Hurricane Ida in 2021 caused immense damage. Many people lost their lives. For my family, it was a really scary time. I remember one night we were watching TV and we just heard this gushing noise from downstairs. We went down and there was like a waterfall pouring through my window. I think at one point the water was up to like here. Some New York residents are now asking themselves how much longer they can go on living here as the climate becomes more and more extreme and the sea level continues to rise. One possible solution is to try and hold back the waves with a seawall. And that's exactly what they're doing here. The city is spending billions of pounds on flood defenses. I'm meeting Thomas, one of the leading engineers.
So, Lila, following Superstorm Sandy, what we came up with is a seawall that runs all around the southern tip of Manhattan. It's about 10 miles long. We looked at it and we thought about wave action. There's a potential for water still splashing over the wall, which is why we're coming up to an elevation which is about 9 feet higher than where we're standing right now.
So here's the thing. Flood defenses are great, but some people think they're just a sticking plaster. And eventually, a bit like with my sandcastle, the rising sea levels will do their damage. So do we need a more radical solution to save our coastal cities and ultimately to save humanity? Well, how about this? An incredible vision of the future, like something out of a movie. Welcome to the world's first floating city. So this is just a computer-generated animation showing what it might look like. But believe it or not, a city like this could soon become a reality. I'm meeting the chief engineer from a company called OceanX, which is hoping to build the world's first floating city in South Korea.
The advantage of a floating city is we can move up and down with the waves and with the tides. And the fact that it's floating is also helpful because it will accommodate the seawater level rising.
But how can you make a city float? Won't like the buildings and everything be just way too heavy?
Well, it follows a certain physical principle, which is the one that is used by boats, right? They are very heavy, but they still float.
So is this an exception that we just can't beat climate change? We're gonna have to live with it?
I believe what we're doing right now here is trying to find the solutions to a problem that is actually becoming real. There are a lot of nations right now where their population is being displaced. They're becoming climate refugees. And so if it's going to be stopped, we have potential solutions, and this is one of the solutions, and we're going to pursue with that.
So maybe we're gonna need a new New York, a city that floats like a boat. How crazy is that?
I'd say it's very crazy, but also quite cool. So that's it. The 6 ways to save the planet. Number 1, grow crops that can cope with drought conditions. Number 2, improving public transport to reduce pollution from cars and lorries. Number 3, bringing nature into our cities to cool the temperature and soak up the carbon. Number 4, using more renewable energy like solar power. Number 5, producing our foods much closer to home, like in these giant greenhouses. And number 6, trying out new ideas for the future of humanity, like floating cities to help us live on the ocean. What's clear is if we really want to save our planet, it's up to us. We all have to play our part, no matter how old we are or where we live. We can do this, guys. But we've got to make changes now.